Also, use that if you'd like. There are some different settings options within that closed captioning, so feel free to play with that. Or if you've never experienced that, now would be a good time to try it and kind of get a little diverse with that. Also, I am recording this training today so that we can have it for future use, and just an awareness of that as well. Feel free to use that chat box as you'd like throughout the course of the time. But as you could see, Chaz and Chris kind of dancing in their seats there, they are certainly open to conversation and questions, and we would highly encourage that throughout today's time with them as well. With that, again, feel free to turn your video on, leave it off. We're all professionals, figure out what works best for you, but would encourage that participation if you're willing and open to that today. If you happen to experience any technical difficulties, feel free to private message me or someone that you're familiar with. Again, you can utilize the chat for that as well. So now, kind of getting to that reason why we're all together today. Again, October, we recognize National Disability Employment Awareness Month. There are those recognitions and events happening because we want to recognize the contributions of workers with disability and also hope to educate about the value of workforce inclusivity of individuals with disabilities and highlight skills and talents that people have. It's important to ensure that America's workplaces continue to include and accommodate people with disabilities, and that'll also be an important part of our economic rebound as we work through, continue into 2021 and into the future. So this year's theme for NDEAM was America's Recovery Powered by Inclusion, which is pretty fitting, I think. So finally, I'd also like to just quickly recognize and express appreciation for the planning committee members out of our local group that assisted in making today's presentation possible. Also to thank the Board of Vocational Rehabilitation, the Board of Service to the Blind and Visually Impaired, and the Statewide Independent Living Council for their support of the event. Additionally, thank you to our local Aberdeen Human Resource Association group. They allowed and encouraged October to be the highlight for their meetings that they have every month. And so a lot of those members are joining us today. Just a quick plug, we will have a business meeting after this event today. So if anybody is interested in the Aberdeen Area Human Resource Association group or wants to just stay to be a part of that meeting, we certainly would welcome that as well. So that'll just follow today's presentation. With that, it's my joy to turn it over to Cindy Kirschman, who has had the opportunity to work with our presenters in other capacities and over the course of many years. So I'm kind of jealous of Cindy's involvement there, and you'll see why as we get started with Chaz and Chris here. But Cindy, I will turn it over to you.
Good morning, everybody. And yes, as Laura said, I, along with my coworkers and about 250 students, high school students in South Dakota, have had the opportunity and been honored to work with Chaz and Chris through our Youth Leadership Forum. Chaz and Chris have been coming to South Dakota since 2015 to guide our WildFers in developing leadership skills and advocacy skills. I'm thinking they're getting to like coming to South Dakota as much as we like having them come here, because each year they stay another day maybe. So with that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this dynamic duo. Chris Milo is the communications manager, and Chris is the guy in the black shirt, is the communications manager at Achieva, a chapter of the ARC, which provides services and advocacy for people with disabilities and their families. Chris's job entails managing Achieva's various social media platforms, creating digital and email marketing campaigns, filming, editing videos, writing stories, press releases, and other content for Achieva publications. He began his educational journey studying animation, but ultimately ended up leaving before completing the program. He then dabbled in retail and photography, youth mentoring, and freelance video production. 9 years later, though, he earned his bachelor's in TV video production. He currently serves on the Next Generation Council of Vibrant Pittsburgh, on the board of the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is an organization that provides competitive athletic opportunities to people with physical disabilities. And with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he is a coach for their basketball team, and he enjoys spending time with his beautiful wife. The other part of this dynamic duo is Chaz Kellum in the striped shirt. Chaz is employed with Highmark Health as a program manager in the Equitable Enterprise Health Institute. Previously to this job, he was director of PitServes, and that provides University of Pittsburgh students the opportunity to engage in ethical and sustainable service. He also was the Senior Director for Advocacy for Race and Gender Equity at YWCA Greater Pittsburgh. And in this job, he was responsible to develop and lead all advocacy efforts for the agency and provide educational opportunities that influence systemic change. He began his career, though, at and that's when we first met him, when he was with the Pittsburgh Pirates, which he spent for 10 seasons. He spent 3 years there with the area of ticket sales and marketing, but he later then moved into the Community and Public Affairs Department as the manager of diversity initiatives. With this position, he was responsible for managing the organization's interaction with various minority constituencies. Lots of work in the advocacy field for both of these gentlemen. Chaz earned his Master of Science degree in organizational leadership and his bachelor's in health and physical education. He is active and committed to his community as he serves on several nonprofit boards and is a coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, as I said earlier, is a competitive wheelchair basketball team. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters for today, Chaz and Chris. So glad to have you.
Hello, 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 and good morning to all of you as we join you over this wonderful digital platform from Pittsburgh. Here it's just crossed over into the afternoon, but I want to welcome you all and thank you so very much for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure. It's just truly a pleasure to share this opportunity with all of you and to be alongside my best friend in the world and to do this. I get to do this with it's just a true honor. I want to start off before I toss it to Chris to thank all of the partners that Laura mentioned. Thank you all so much for joining, for promoting. Cindy showed us all the great advertisements and the billboard, and just thank you. And I want to, special shout out to some of the folks that we've met over our 7 years of coming. I see my good friend Dan Round. I see Brett. I see lots of folks that we've met over the years by coming to YLF in Aberdeen. And as Cindy mentioned, we always look forward to that June trip. We've learned the area, have made lots of good friends, have enjoyed some very unique cuisine while we've been there, and have just very much always enjoy interacting and engaging with the young people throughout that time. So thank you for that, and good to see so many of you. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see everyone. Some familiar names, which I love to see. Man, I can't believe it's been so long since we've been starting to come out to South Dakota. And I didn't realize it was so many students that we've been engaged with and helped, and interacted with. Great to hear. Love having an impact. If you guys see me looking off to the right here, I'm working on 2 different screens. So I'm not like looking away. I'm actually checking the chat and you guys on video. And then PowerPoint presentation is right here in front of me. So just to give you a little heads up of what I'm working with here. So I'm going to get us started by getting the PowerPoint started. And this is going to be a little bit different. Let's see, make sure. I want to make sure my chat's up as well.
We're going to test your Zoom ability here. Can we get a reaction, a thumbs up?
Make sure you can see everything.
Make sure you can see it. Yeah, give us some thumbs ups. You can use one of the reactions in Zoom. Give us a visual thumbs up if you're on camera. Thank you, Kate, Kendra, Whitney. Thank you all so much. Very much appreciate it. It's great that you all can see that. Thank you. So to get us started here, we were graciously invited by Laura and Cindy to come and share with you a little bit about our employment journey. and our experiences as two individuals within the disability community, a unique perspective about not only our employment journey, but how COVID has repositioned, redefined, refocused how the individuals with disabilities across the country are engaging in the work. We do want your questions. So Chris and I are very open, we're very transparent, and we want to make sure that you all get, as attendees, as much information, insight, and resources as possible as we navigate the next 45 minutes or so with you. So please, please, please feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we will make sure we leave some time in the end for those questions and responses as well. We want to make sure that we hear from you. All right, so we're going to jump right into it. I first want to comment on our wonderful dance moves. That was not on my resume. Dancing is not on my resume. It's all on the shoulders. Dan taught me that. Dan Round, all on the shoulders. Hopefully, you know, stay up here. You can't go wrong, right? So thank you for the music, and thought we would throw it back a little bit when music was amazing. Music's still good, but music was amazing decades ago. So Chris, go transition our next slide here.
Oh, are you still on the, can you see the education one for you?
I cannot. All I can see is how COVID redefined the workplace. This is technology here, folks, right? This is
right, exactly.
The power of technology here.
All right, there it goes. Can you see it now?
Yep, there it is. There it is. Oh, look at that. Look at that handsome stud. All right, so folks, that's me. Not going to give you another full bio, but I think it's important to say, you know, born and raised in Pittsburgh, and as you can see from the photo there, for those that may not know Chris and I as well, I do use I use a wheelchair for mobility. I was born with a rare bone disease that causes me to use a wheelchair full time. So I have never been able to walk. And through all of that, you know, I have had a very, what I would define, full, exciting, adventurous life. You know, I did receive an education from Edinburgh with an undergrad and my master's from Robert Morris, which are both local institutions here. I changed my major 3 or 4 times, like many of you may have done. When I graduated my master's, you know, and I believe it was 2010, I still had no idea what I wanted to do. And still, even now, almost 40, still don't really have a full idea of what the quote unquote career trajectory is. And I will say there's a little bit of excitement with that and fear. And it all stems back to sort of my extracurricular and what I did as both a high school student and as a college student. I was very active. By staying active, it kept me out of trouble. All right. There's an analogy out there: idle hands get you in trouble, blah, blah. Right. But I stayed very active. I wanted to diversify the networks and the people I had around me. And by doing so, it allowed me to learn from people that didn't look like me. It allowed me to learn from their lived experiences. And I was able to grow and develop as a person. I didn't know it then, but I was really shaping the person that I was becoming, which hopefully has helped me as the professional that I have become, right? So as we think about students, as we think about college students, we think about high school students, you know, really thinking about what are those transferable skills that they're getting through any type of engagement experience that can be provided, and how those transferable skills can ultimately transition into employment. Speaking of employment, my employment journey has been, you know, a variety of experiences. At Edinburgh, I was very involved employment-wise, had a variety of positions. I never left Edinburgh. I moved in as a first-year student. I stayed every summer, worked until classes. As mentioned by Cindy, I worked in baseball. Yes, the Pirates. By the way, I was there for the last 3 winning seasons. We don't have the greatest baseball team in the world, but that's another Zoom call. and have had a variety of positions with, leadership, advocacy, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. All of my career has had two points of intersection. It's been community and it's been diversity, equity, and inclusion. So no matter where I've landed, sports, nonprofit, higher ed, and now just recently in the corporate sphere, it has always intersected with diversity as well as inclusion, equity, and community. But I will say that all communities and populations have unique experiences and cultural characteristics. Not every member of the disability community is the same. Not every person of color is the same, right? So, the whole idea of if you build it, they will come, one size shoes fits all those things in reality don't necessarily work. We have to be creative. We have to be transparent. We have to be realistic and understand that each experience is unique and has to be shaped to meet those needs. The information that I often share, that I share in YLF, I'm going to share with you all today, is from my own lived experiences. So one thing I want you to remember here is to respect, honor each person's unique experience, right? And value that individual's experience. And while today, we want to make sure that we motivate you, encourage you, we want to make sure that we're laying the foundation. This is my challenge to you. This is the foundation to figure out what we can do as a state of South Dakota on both sides, wherever you are, to increase, improve, change employment experiences and employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. And, the CDC has a very interesting definition. Disability is a condition of the body and mind that makes it more difficult for the person with that said condition to do certain activities and maybe interact with the world around them. The onset of a disability can also take many forms. It can present at birth, it can come from an accident or injury, and it can result from a long-standing condition or disease. I share that with you because disability can impact any of us at any time. It does not discriminate, right? It crosses wealth, race, religion. It can impact us all at any time. So as institutions with employment opportunities, if we focus on and prioritize disability opportunities and employment, it makes us all better. Makes us all better. Really quick, a few stories I just wanted to share, and I'm going to be very brief here. I want to make sure my good friend Chris has an opportunity to share some of his as well. Have had multiple people ask me in employment opportunities where the stairs are. And your first reaction may be, well, that seems rude. Well, in fact, their perception and perspective of me is that they saw me as a colleague, not as a person with a disability. So their mind saw me as a colleague and as an equal, not necessarily confined to a wheelchair. I've had lots of people over the course of my career talk louder to me, have sort of over-explained or overemphasized their point, assuming that I couldn't articulate what they were trying to explain. And I share that with you because it's very important that we do our best to leave our assumptions at the door, right? When we get into that car or when we get out of bed now in COVID and we get over to our computer, we leave our assumptions there. I've also learned to value that with COVID, that technology has increased our ability for employment options, but it also has reaffirmed that we still have some technology challenges that face our country. Not everybody has equal access to technology. Internet access can be a problem. The integration of accessible equipment in technology platforms still remains a barrier. So as we think about not only employing individuals with disabilities, think about the intersection of once you get that individual, do you have the infrastructure and the willingness to make sure that barriers are removed for full, successful employment opportunities? So I'm going to end there and turn it over to Chris.
Probably need to unmute myself. Thank you, Chaz. Similar to Chaz, I want to give you a little bit of a background. And again, I can only, as Chaz said, speak from my own lived experience as somebody who uses a wheelchair. My education, I went to Woodland Hills High School. And then my plan was to basically, you know, from the time I was, oh my gosh, I want to say like 12 years old or something, I wanted to be an animator. I love Disney movies, right? And as great as the music was that we chose, I certainly could have chosen a ton of Disney show tunes too. So I love Disney. So my time and my life plan was get done with high school, go to Edinburgh University. Edinburgh University had, for me, was at the time a great fit. It not only had a wheelchair basketball program that I got to play on and engage, but they also had one of the top rated animation programs in the country. And one of their lead animators, or one of their lead animation professors, actually worked on Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid. So it was, you know, a perfect opportunity for me. And I went there from 2001 to 2005 and found that I didn't love animating, if you can believe that. This dream of mine, I didn't enjoy it, and school became a struggle. And I was pushing myself and working really hard and ended up getting really sick and had some major health complications. And I was about a little over a year worth of credits to graduate. And I had to withdraw from school to manage my health. And after getting healthy again, I was like, do I really want to go back and do this? I'm only a year away from graduation, yeah, but do I want to move back up to school? It was like hours away from where I lived. Do I want to move back there? Do I want to put myself through this again? When I was at the end, I was hating every minute of it. And so I took some time. It's not on there on my education, but I tried going to the Art Institute for web design. I didn't care for that. And so I started going to work, as Cindy said. I went and tried just working. And I finally decided to go back and finish my education at Robert Morris University, which is local to Pittsburgh. And I got a Bachelor of Arts degree in TV video production. It matched up really well with the creativity that I liked with animation, but it didn't have the drawbacks that I didn't like about animation. While I was in school, I had a lot of extracurriculars, similar to Chaz. In high school, I was part of yearbook and Spanish club. I was the head editor of the yearbook my senior year. In junior high, I was on student council. I always did a lot of sports, and at Edinburgh, I did wheelchair basketball. So I was always trying to be engaged as much as I could, similar to Chaz, in finding that community and finding those ways that I could grow skills. My work history, as you can imagine, as someone who was searching for what I wanted to do, was all over the place. I started work at Kennywood Amusement Park, which is an amusement park here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I worked there for 4 summers, starting in high school and then going through Edinburgh University. So I would come home every summer and work there. When I was done with school at Edinburgh and I was searching for what I wanted to do, I worked retail at Brookstone. So if you guys have ever been to airports and you see those Brookstone with all the, you know, the shoulder pillows or whatever, I worked at Brookstone for a number of years. I was a sales associate and a seasonal manager during the holidays. I worked at the Peel Center, which is another disability organization here in Pittsburgh, as their youth mentor in technology. I worked part-time at Target Portrait Studios. And then I started doing freelance photo and video on the side with some background that I had learned from Edinburgh with video production and things like that. And I got gigs doing photos for the Pittsburgh Pirates through some of my connections. I happen to know a guy that worked there at the time. I did work with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, doing some video stuff for them. And when I graduated Robert Morris University, I actually got hired on from them very quickly to do some video editing for them. I couldn't find a job after I graduated. So even after I graduated, I took an unpaid internship at the Washington Wild Things as a production intern for a summer, just to get more experience. And then, and then I ended up moving into a small nonprofit called Communitopia for their program manager, and their whole deal was educating through videos. So it was a perfect tie-in to my degree. And from there, I sort of merged everything that I was working on the disability side and on the video side, and found my job here at Achieva, where I'm now the communications manager, and I've been here for a number of years. So all over the place to get where I'm at right now. One of the things that I want to convey to you guys, lessons learned, is things don't always go according to plan, and there are always going to be roadblocks. When I worked at Kennywood, I worked there for a number of summers. I never got promoted. And when I inquired why, when I was passed over for a promotion, the response was, well, it's not because you're in a wheelchair. But the money drop at the end of the night was down a flight of steps with no elevator. And that was the manager's responsibility. So maybe it was because I was in a wheelchair. I didn't get a promotion to a full-time manager position at Brookstone. And the reason was because I had a disability-specific incident with bathroom issues. I'll just be really blunt about it, about bathroom issues. And the general manager didn't like how I handled it and refused me a management position or opportunity to interview for a management position because of that. When I was looking for internships, I vividly remember going to an intern opportunity. And when I got there, there was no elevator and a flight of steps to get into the building. And there was no way that I could interview. And they said that they would reschedule the interview. And of course they never did, but I wasn't going to get hired or have an internship at a place that I couldn't get into. And these are all opportunities I see in the chat here. Sometimes a roadblock can lead you away from something you thought you wanted towards something better. Exactly. I could have tried to fight in every single one of those situations, but in every situation I opted to take a step back and decide to myself, is this something I want to fight? Can I do better than this? Should I be looking at something else that fits who I am and what I want to do better? And that's kind of where I was at. And so what I really want you to take away is that your plan towards success is never a straight line. And anytime you look at anybody's success, when you're looking at somebody who is the CEO of a company or somebody who started their own business or Bill Gates or whoever it is, their success wasn't a straight line. There were pitfalls along the way, there were detours, and that's okay. And so as people with disabilities, we need to understand that we need to give ourselves grace. We need to give ourselves time to navigate where our road to success leads. And my version of success is not going to be the same as yours, and it shouldn't be. And we need to be okay embracing that as well. So thinking about disability and employment, these are last month's numbers from Labor Department about the labor force participation rate for people with disabilities compared to people without disabilities. So if you think of everybody with a disability, 100% of people with disabilities, how much of that percent is active in the labor force? In August, it was 35.6%. In September, we saw a growth, an uptick to 36.4%, which is great. But you can see when you compare on the right to people without disabilities, that the labor force participation rate is at 76%. But you can also see between these two that people without disabilities dropped from August to September, while people with disabilities rose from August to September. So what is that telling us? In my mind, that's telling us that while people without disabilities are maybe feeling anxious, looking for better opportunities, moving on, people with disabilities are more loyal to their jobs and they're sticking with it. And I'm hoping that that means that employers are seeing that and taking advantage of this vital talent pool that's available. For a further comparison here, this is the labor force participation rate for people with disabilities. And I compared September 2018 to 2019 to 2020 to 2021. And what you can see is, can you guys see my cursor here? Yeah. So you can see here, and they're all, in the mid 30%, but you can see a drop in here in September 2020. This is COVID, right? We're in the middle of COVID right here in September 2020, and you can see that it drops down, but it's still staying pretty consistent. So people with disabilities throughout, the pandemic were essential employees, and, sticking with their jobs. And then again, we're seeing a spike as things come back up to normal, hopefully. So just a little bit of perspective there when it comes to disability employment moving forward. I also wanted to point you guys to and I'll put it in a chat as soon as I turn this over to Chaz. There was a Post Gazette, the Pittsburgh Post Gazette is a newspaper here. There is somebody with a disability wrote an opinion piece that says employers who can't find workers have not interviewed a person with a disability. It's a really powerful piece that he wrote, which is why I want to share it with you guys. It just came out the other day. But some of the points that he makes is that if employers start looking to hire people with disabilities, you're going to have access to a deeper hiring pool, right? So you're going to have more options of people to employ. You're going to have increased revenue. There's been studies that show that disability inclusion champions had a 28% higher revenue than companies that aren't considered disability inclusion champions. And that's huge. And they're also going to have enhanced staff morale, productivity, and innovation. And this is all proven through studies. So there's no reason not to look to hire people with disabilities. They can be vital parts of your organization and your companies. But there are some things that we need to consider when it comes to creating an environment where people with disabilities feel welcome and included. So I'll let
before we get to this, why are we leaving? There's a few things I wanted to mention on COVID. Thank you, Chris, for those statistics and being able to demonstrate that the individuals with disabilities, our community, are no longer a community with their hand out when it comes to employment, right? Across the country, we are seeing folks not wanting to work for a variety of reasons, or whether that's the pay is not good. I mean, many of my favorite restaurants here in this region are either closed completely or have the modified hours because they simply can't find employees. Well, I push back to them a little bit and ask them why. And are they fully expanding their search, right? So that leads me to sort of the things as we think about individuals with disabilities and what we've learned or what we've recognized with COVID. I will say, as a member of the community, from my own personal experience, everything that COVID has elevated the conversation around is not necessarily quote unquote new, right? It just really brought to the forefront the nature of these things. And one thing I think is important to start off with is this idea of remote work and how beneficial that can be for our community. While it may isolate us a little bit more, right? COVID has provided employers all around the country a new perspective about how performing job duties can be done in a virtual environment. Many of you are still at home and maybe working there for maybe significant time, or maybe bouncing back in between, right? 2 days at the office, 3 days from home, back and forth, right? But recognizing that even when we return to work accommodations is not one size fits all. And I mentioned that concept earlier. So as we bring people back, what do we need to revisit and think about differently as we bring people back to work? Not only that, you're also battling your various state requirements or field requirements, right? Depending on if you work in food industry or in, around animals, right? There are different laws based upon the state or federal guidelines that may require a little bit more creativity. I also mentioned the technology challenge that is there. But with that, I challenge you as employers, for the employers that are on the call today, or those that have hiring opportunities, think about the functions of a job and how they're best performed, right? Many times I've seen a job, you have to be able to lift 5 or 10 pounds. For what? Right? Very rarely do you have to do that, right? And the traditional way on how we achieve those functions, we need to revisit, right? We need to revisit and be more creative in how we focus on the essential duties versus the opportunities or the potential for something. Chris, do you want to add something there?
Nope, you're spot on. I just wanted to add in, like, when I started at Achieva, which is a disability service organization, as the communications manager, 99% of my job is on the computer at a desk. There was a 25 pounds, be able to lift 25-pound requirement on the job posting. Let's just say that. And so I agree. We really need to look at and think strongly about what are the essential portions of these jobs. What is essential and why is it essential? And I think, if I'm going to be honest, I think a lot of employees are starting to wise up to this, which is why you're starting to see people, possibly leaving jobs. And I don't want to get too far ahead, but that's the other thing. I also want to point out that when it comes to hiring and hiring people with disabilities, we also have to be thinking about where we're doing our outreach, right? And how we're doing our interview process and how we're doing our application process. Not every person with a disability is going to have a long resume. And if you just rely on computer algorithms to kick resumes out of the talent pool, you're going to miss out on people that are going to be, strong workers for you, honestly. And they're going to be some of your most enthusiastic and dedicated workers. We've also seen during the pandemic that even though there's been a lot of opportunities for people to go to remote work, we've seen these essential jobs, right? We're seeing grocery stores, we're seeing department stores, hospitals. There are workers there every single day, and there's workers with disabilities there every single day. And so those essential jobs are not going away, and they're getting harder and harder to fill. So again, looking at that talent pool. Before we move on, I'd love to see in the chat, why do you think there's this great mass exodus from jobs? Why do you think people are leaving their jobs right now?
So my wife, while you're putting those in the chat, Chris, that's a great question in the chat, please. My lovely spouse, my wife, works in HR, and she recently told me that the United States is facing what they're calling now the Great Resignation, where you're going to see more people resigning from jobs all across the country than you have in decades. So again, why do you think people are leaving jobs? What are some various reasons you think folks are leaving?
Chaz, you may know better than I do just because of your wife, but while we're waiting for responses. But I believe the last estimate was over the last 3 months, it's been averaging 4 million people leaving their job every month.
That's incredible. Yeah, I didn't hear that statistic, but that is incredible.
Okay, so I'm seeing more money, more flexibility. People in general want more respect from employers, and in many cases from the public with whom they need to work. Yes. Yeah, I think public respect is lacking at times. People are too comfortable in remaining in their homes, possible. For higher paying jobs, be able to work from home, lack of flexibility at the job, low wages, long commutes. Oof, I feel that. Want a job where they feel valued. I just want to, for the long commute thing, I was working from home up until June. And in June, we started coming back into the office, and that was before a lot of the other places down in Pittsburgh. It dropped my commute from 45 minutes to 10 without people on the road. was amazing.
It's incredible. Chris, there are 2 comments in here. Thank you, everybody. Keep putting in the chat. I'm going to comment on Kimberly's wage wars. Love that comment, right? People can get $1 here, 50 cents more here or there. You know, why would you be in personal care, for an example, you know, which I know is a challenge for across the country, care attendants. Why would you be a care attendant, be responsible for someone where you could work at your local grocery store or gas station for a similar hourly wage, right? Wage wars. And then Katie, your comment about priority shift around COVID. Oh my goodness, Katie, powerful. So
Absolutely.
powerful.
I just want to, yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that kind of gets overlooked, and then we'll move on. I think one of the things that gets overlooked with COVID is that whether we want to agree with it or not, we've all been through a mass trauma. We've all been isolated, right? There's been shutdowns, there's been layoffs, there's been a number of things that have, in one way or another, traumatized a large segment of the population. And with trauma becomes reflection, reevaluation, and deciding what's important. So you're also going to see a lot from that as well. Let's see. Yep, income, living wage are important. Yep. All right. So as we move on here, a lot of great answers. There was a survey done from monster.com and Harris Poll. And so some of these survey results, what employees are looking for when they're looking for a job. 76% of employees post-COVID, or not post-COVID because we're still in COVID, but 76% are looking for more flexibility from their job and from their employer. 76%, and 10% want more empathy. Only 14% want higher pay. So while money is a factor, think about how, as employers, we can, look at 86% of the people that are looking for jobs are looking as employees. 86%, if we can meet their needs for flexibility and empathy, that higher pay maybe isn't as important. And then for those that are considered leaving their job, survey of those that have considered leaving their job, the top reasons given were burnout, which kind of goes to some of the comments about how people are being treated by the public, how people are being treated by their employer as demand gets higher. As people quit and work responsibilities get dumped on them, it leads to burnout, and burnout leads to people looking for other opportunities. Lack of growth, opportunities for growth within their current position. Absolutely. And that's going to be more and more prevalent as we move forward. Because people are leaving, responsibilities are going to be dumped on 1 or 2 people or more in each department. And if they don't see an opportunity coming for growth, they're going to feel burnout and leave. And then there's other opportunities elsewhere, which leads to that whole wage war thing that Chaz was speaking to. So those are some of the top responses.
Now, as we think about redefining the workplace, there's 3 things we wanted to mention to you all. The first one is really thinking about empathy, right? The COVID and the current environment in which we're all living has really changed and impacted us all in a variety of ways. With regards to the disability community, not only are we trying to find, maintain, sustain employment, we're also having to continue to juggle a variety of other things, isolation, making sure our medical needs are met. So just, I would say when it comes to making sure that employers have a little bit more empathy, and that goes to the comment, right, of avoiding burnout, change your perspective, right? We have an opportunity right now, we've had over the last 18 months or so to really change our perspective, change our requirements, change our expectations, and be kind to each other and yourself. At the end of the day, this comes down to humanity, right? So as we think about, COVID specifically, I'm trying to keep my family safe. I need to maintain employment. I want to be an excellent professional, but I need to make sure I'm keeping my family safe and my medical needs are met, right? So whether I'm requesting new things from my employer, I'm requesting some additional time to visit doctors, I want to know what their health and safety guidelines are, right? So empathy comes down to transparency, giving yourself some time, giving yourself some grace, and making sure that we never lose the humanity as we think about the workplace. And in addition to that, it takes me to this idea of flexibility. You already said it enough, right? We've already commented on that, right? Flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. As you define your various initiatives, as you define the position, the opportunities, right? Think about flexibility. And somebody commented about the change of generation. And I'm in close to 40. I just worked at a higher education institution. Those students, right, aren't your 9 to 5 type of people, right? They want to sleep until noon and work until 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. They want to work at midnight sometimes during projects, right? So this traditional ways of working, we have to be more flexible and more creative. And we need to change our perspective about listening to the community and the needs of those around us. We often build relationships and collaborations, assuming what we believe people want or need. Pause and listen to the community. Measure your success by how you're listening to the community and how your programs integrate in with the community as much as possible. And then that leads us to diversity, right? That leads us to this idea of diversity. We want you to create a culture of inclusion. Diversity is the action where you purposely learn about people, places, and things outside of your own, understand that each individual is unique, right? And acknowledging a variety of the values and the backgrounds in a group. And that will lead to building a culture of inclusion, right? How effective communication internally and externally will empower employees and empower the individual with disabilities to engage and interact fully. Right? So that will amplify the voices of everybody within the organization, with everybody in the organization, if we focus on diversity and we focus on building a culture of inclusion. And as we move forward, we wanted to make sure we gave you some action items or some things to do. And we've touched upon all of them, so none of them you should be hearing for the first time. I want to start off by saying building a culture of inclusion. Think about as for those that are hire, that have opportunities to hire or work with students, think about the etiquette that goes with the entire process, right? From the time that you're recruited, as Chris mentioned, going through the interview process, and once a person gets hired, what is the etiquette or the onboarding orientation to that experience, right? Are you posting your jobs on job boards where individual with disabilities can find them? Do you have flexible work arrangements, telecommuting, flexible schedules? On the interview, do you have questions that allow the variety of education levels to answer? Do you allow for virtual interviewing to occur? What's the even application process? Can it be read by a screen reader? Various disabilities can interact as many applications are going to online. Once onboarded, is there a group, a business resource group, or a group of people that can welcome and orientate that individual fully to make sure that their experience once on board, because retention is also a priority, as Chris mentioned, and we mentioned job switching, right? So once on board, is an opportunity for that individual and those individuals to be fully included and to have the best experience possible initiated by that said institution or organization. So those are some of my keys I would say on moving forward. Chris, do you have any suggestions for folks?
No, I think you touched on some of the major ones. Again, for anybody with a disability that's on the call, I would say again, the journey to success is not a straight line, right? And getting a job, even though there's even though it's everybody's looking to hire right now, getting a job is never easy. It's a full-time job to get a job. So don't get discouraged and keep working on improving yourself as an employee. And, hopefully, a future employee will see that. For people that already have jobs, what I would challenge you guys to do is challenge within your organizations and businesses, challenge with partner organizations. If you see something I hate to use the corny see something, say something, but what I do know is that people don't know what they don't know, right? HR professionals will sometimes just keep copying and pasting the job requirements over and over and over again, and never actually think about what the position actually entails, or if this is a requirement for, lifting or standing the entire time. When it comes to cashiers, what is the purpose for not allowing somebody who may need to sit at a cashier at a register? What is the purpose for that? Why are optics so important? Why aren't we challenging this rule, this idea of, optically what looks right or looks wrong? So if you see something that can be improved, that can help somebody else, I would challenge everybody to say something and speak up as well. So with that, we're going to open it up to any questions that anybody may have. And while we're waiting for questions, I don't know if anybody else has seen this, but to speak to Chaz's emphasis on diversity and how different voices can bring different perspectives. Did anybody else see Old Navy put out a what was it? It was a t-shirt or like logo design line. They do different like brands, and they have like this saying or that saying or whatever, and they did with hand gestures, and it ended up being a swear word in ASL, and they had no idea, and so they committed how much money, millions of dollars probably, to rolling this line out, and then realized after the fact and had to pull it all. And it was something that had they had somebody, or had they even asked outside to get general feedback from a more diverse audience, they might have caught it and not, cost themselves millions of dollars. So diversity is important because it gives you perspective and it gives you eyes on things that you may have no idea about.
Thanks, Chris. My final comment will simply be around the idea that, the individual with disabilities, our community is some of the most dedicated, most creative, most thought-provoking folks out there. You're going to, as we land employment opportunities, we are going to significantly do an amazing job at whatever that is, right? So, think about the creativity and the potential opportunity and that you're getting with individual within our community. So again, we are committed, we are flexible, we adapt, we think outside the box, and we are hungry. So continue to think about all those things as we're working with and engaging with individuals with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. And I know we got just a little bit of time left, but as just another story or experience, I'm always trying to find things, it's part of my job, but I'm always trying to find things and stories to share, not just with my audience, but with others. But again, making workplaces more accessible overall is going to benefit the business. And so that's something that we should really consider. Focus group with disabilities need to be involved with everything with companies, brands. Absolutely. There was a story out of New York City that was tragic, actually. But people with disabilities have been fighting for public transportation, accessible subway stations for years and years and years. And they had actually, there was a lawsuit against New York City Transit because they weren't making their subway stops accessible fast enough. And it wasn't until a mom was trying to get her kid and her stroller up the steps and fell and passed away before there was actual public outrage about this. And that's when things actually started moving. And it's a real shame because we've seen this throughout history, especially when it comes to disability things. We've seen it with the ADA, right? People didn't want to put curb cuts and ramp cuts around. But the people that use these things, it's a disability thing, but the people that use it most are UPS drivers or delivery people. It's moms and dads that are pushing strollers. Disability accommodations help everybody. And that's a hard thing to convey and for people to wrap their heads around. But when we say that, and those statistics bear it out, it's going to make a business more successful. It's going to have a higher retention. It's going to have higher revenue. These are the things that we're talking about. It's not just because you're hiring people with disabilities. It's because you're starting to think about things from a broader perspective and making them more open for everybody.
Chris and Chaz, this is Cindy. I just wanted to thank you for bringing up the subject of the essential tasks of the job. You know, just last week I was sitting in I was at the bowling alley, and a mother of a young man came up to me and just said, I'm just devastated because her son is looking for another job. And she says, I know he can do everything but these 2 tasks, and they won't give him a chance. You know, and and that is so true. I mean, what are coworkers for but to help out each other with certain tasks? So thank you. And thank you guys. It was a great presentation.
And for things like that, are these tasks that the other employees prefer to do or don't prefer to do?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Why are those not conversations we're having?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Thank you all so very much. It's truly been a pleasure. You know, Cindy and Laura both have our contact information. You know, I'll speak for myself. I'm happy to, you know, engage with an employer if you have one that needs, you know, some extra bit of guidance or support, as well as, you know, our young people throughout the state. You know, again, we've been gracious enough to interact with several, but, you know, happy to provide an extra boost of support, you know, from afar if you need it. Sometimes, you know, seeing folks and similar experiences can be that added boost needed. So, you know, happy to do that as well. And thank you to Cindy and Laura for all the coordination and for having us. And thank you all for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being with us. Again, wonderful information, things to ponder and kind of reframe how you might be doing business or doing things on your end. I do want to give a shout out. We've got a attendee who's got her class with us. So we've got the Project Search class in Aberdeen there with Mrs. White. So hello, Project Search, and thanks for joining us, you guys. But yeah, if there is any other questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll hang around on this for a couple of minutes with Chaz and Chris, but also, again, if you do want to join us for that Aberdeen Area Human Resource Association business meeting, we'll be starting that here shortly as well. So thanks again so much for everybody joining us. Have a great day.
You guys did a wonderful job. I mean, it just really, it's amazing when you sit and listen how it just all comes together. Yeah, it just,
Absolutely.
it's very good.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
And according to the comments, other people felt it's not just me.
Cindy's not just biased. I agree completely. No,
Yeah.
so great.
I think the hardest part with anything, and I don't know how to fix it, but the hardest part is, Cindy, kind of like you were saying, is you can identify what the problem is, but you can't make people change. And it's hard to open eyes sometimes. I wish that was easier.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping everybody, you know, when people take some things from it, but
Yeah. Well, and it was speaking from experience in your heart and everything, and the simplicity of it, the way you guys explained it makes it easy for people. It should make it fairly easy. And there were some HR people on and other people.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the stuff you said too, I thought, oh, that's great for the Project Search students.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm glad they were
Yeah.
able to join. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Cam, if you have.
Do you want your recording still on?
I do not. I need all
Okay.
sorts of support in my job as well. So I am going